The Pond Keeper. The sun hung low in the sky, painting the world in soft gold. Silas stood at the edge of his pond, a small, round body of water tucked away between the willow trees. His fingers gently skimmed the surface, watching ripples spread out like whispered secrets. Around him, the air was filled with the quiet symphony of ducks softly quacking and the rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. Silas wasn't just any man. He was the pond keeper. Every day, people from nearby villages would come to him with worries, little words and feelings they couldn't hold inside. "I'm scared," a girl had whispered yesterday, her voice trembling like a leaf. "I'm lonely," a boy had said just this morning, eyes downcast. Silas took these worries, spoken or sometimes just thought, and with patient hands, he folded them into tiny paper boats. The paper was thin, almost like a petal, and as he creased and folded, the worries seemed to settle quiet and soft inside the boat's hull. He placed the paper boats gently on the pond's surface. One by one, the ducks, his faithful helpers, nudged the boats with their beaks, pushing them downstream. The little boats bobbed happily, carried by the current toward the waterfall at the pond's far edge. As the boats reached the waterfall, Silas would watch as they disappeared into the mist. The worries didn't drown or get lost. They transformed. The mist rose, curling and sparkling in the sunlight, turning into tiny rainbows that arched across the sky, a silent promise that the burdens were lifted. Silas smiled softly. This was his gift, to carry away sadness and fear and turn them into light. Nearby, a young duckling paddled close, peeping happily. Silas reached out a hand and ruffled its downy feathers. "Ready for another journey, little one?" he asked with a warm chuckle. The pond glistened like a mirror under the setting sun, and Silas felt the peaceful pulse of the water beneath his feet. A quiet rhythm, a gentle heartbeat of hope. The air grew cooler as evening crept in, wrapping the pond in soft shadows. Silas stayed by the water's edge, watching the last of the paper boats drift gently into the waterfall's mist. The ducks gathered close, settling on the reeds and lily pads, their quiet quacks mingling with the gentle splash of water. A small breeze stirred the surface, carrying faint scents of earth and wildflowers. Silas inhaled deeply, feeling the calm spread inside him. Each worry he folded into a boat was like a weight lifted, not just from others but from himself too. He had learned long ago that the pond was not just a place to send away sadness. It was a mirror to the soul. "Tell me," he whispered to the night air, "what weighs heavy inside you?" His voice was soft, but the pond answered in ripples. A single duck quacked once, a gentle reply. From the village, footsteps approached quietly along the worn path. A woman stepped into the clearing, clutching a small bundle close to her chest. Silas noticed her immediately, the worry wrapped tightly around her like a cloak. "Good evening," Silas greeted with a nod. She looked up, startled, but the kindness in Silas's eyes calmed her. I don't know if you can help," she said, her voice trembling. Silas smiled gently. "Come, tell me what you carry." The woman unwrapped the bundle, a handful of folded papers, scribbled with words. "They're my fears, things I can't say out loud. They keep me awake at night." Silas motioned for her to sit by the water. He took the papers carefully, folding each into neat paper boats. As he worked, he whispered soft words to ease the tension in the air. Once the last boat was made, Silas placed them on the pond's surface. The ducks nudged the boats, pushing them slowly toward the waterfall. The woman watched, her eyes wide. "Do they really take the worries away?" she asked. Silas nodded. "They don't disappear. They become part of the world, rainbows after the storm. Sometimes that's all we need." A tear slid down her cheek, but a small smile followed. The night deepened, stars twinkling above like scattered wishes. The woman stayed by Silas's side for a while, her gaze fixed on the shimmering pond. The paper boats drifted slowly, pushed gently by the ducks, until they reached the waterfall's edge. There, the water spilled over rocks, catching the moonlight and turning into a silver mist. Silas pointed to the mist rising into the air. See how the boats disappear? That mist carries your fears away, turning them into something soft and light. She nodded, swallowing a lump in her throat. It feels like hope. Silas smiled. It is hope. And sometimes, hope is all we have to hold on to. The ducks waddled close, their feathers ruffling in the night breeze. One of them nudged the woman's hand softly, as if to say, "You're not alone." For a moment, the worries seemed lighter, not erased, but less sharp. The woman took a deep breath and looked up at the stars. "Thank you, Silas," she said quietly. He nodded, feeling the warmth of her gratitude settle around him like a soft blanket. "Come back whenever your heart feels heavy." As she turned to leave, Silas watched her silhouette fade into the dark woods, carrying with her a small spark of peace. Alone again, Silas leaned closer to the water, watching the ripples swirl like silver threads. The pond was quiet now, save for the gentle quacks and the distant whisper of the waterfall. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small folded paper, a worry of his own. Silas rarely shared his burdens, but tonight, the weight pressed heavily on his chest. He unfolded the paper, revealing the words written in his own careful hand. "Am I enough?" Silas sighed, folding it into a boat and setting it carefully on the water. The ducks nudged it forward, and he watched as the boat drifted into the mist, carrying away his doubt. For the first time in a long while, Silas felt a small lightness inside. Morning light spilled softly over the pond, casting long shadows through the willow branches. Silas woke with the sun, the peacefulness of the night still resting in his bones. He dressed quietly and stepped outside, eager to greet the day. The pond lay still, its surface smooth like glass, reflecting the pink and orange sky. Silas walked slowly along the edge, his fingers trailing through the cool water. Ducks fluttered awake, stretching their wings and calling to each other in soft quacks. A boy appeared at the far end of the path, his steps hesitant. Silas watched as the boy approached, clutching a crumpled piece of paper tightly in his small fist. "Hello there," Silas said gently. The boy jumped slightly but didn't run. Instead, he held out the paper. I wrote something." Silas knelt down, smiling warmly. "Would you like to share it with me?" The boy nodded, eyes wide and curious. Silas unfolded the paper carefully. Written in uneven letters were the words, "I'm scared of being forgotten." Silas looked into the boy's eyes and saw the flicker of loneliness hiding there. "Do you want me to help carry that for you?" Silas asked. The boy nodded again. Silas folded the paper into a small, neat boat and set it on the water. A pair of ducks paddled over immediately, pushing the boat gently toward the waterfall. As the boat floated away, Silas put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Your fear isn't alone, and it won't stay with you forever." The boy smiled shyly for the first time, and the warmth of that smile felt like the first light of dawn. Together, they watched the boat disappear into the mist, the worry transforming into a soft, shimmering rainbow that stretched across the sky. Days passed quietly, each one folded gently into the next like the paper boats Silas crafted. The pond remained a place of soft whispers and gentle currents, a refuge where worries found their way to light. One afternoon, a soft breeze stirred the willow leaves, carrying with it the scent of rain. Silas stood by the water, watching as the ducks gathered around the edge, their feathers glistening in the dappled sunlight. A sudden rustle in the bushes caught Silas's attention. From the shadows stepped an old man, his clothes worn but his eyes bright with curiosity. "I heard there's a man here who can carry away troubles," the man said, voice rough but kind. Silas nodded. "That's me. What brings you here?" The old man hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded paper. "I've carried this worry for many years," he said softly. Silas took the paper, unfolding it carefully. The words inside were faded but clear. "I fear I have lived a life no one will remember." Silas's heart ached at the quiet loneliness behind those words. He folded the paper into a boat with extra care, feeling the weight of years in his fingertips. "Let's send this away together," Silas said gently. They placed the boat on the water's surface. The ducks nudged it forward, pushing it steadily toward the waterfall. The old man watched, a single tear escaping down his cheek. "For years, I thought my story was too small," he whispered. "But maybe, like this boat, it will become part of something bigger." Silas smiled, his own eyes glistening. Every story matters. Every worry, every hope. They all become rainbows. As the mist rose and the boat vanished, the old man's shoulders relaxed. The pond had taken his burden, and in return, given him peace. The following morning, a soft fog hugged the pond, blurring the edges of the trees and casting a dreamlike haze over the water. Silas stood wrapped in his coat, breathing in the cool, damp air. The ducks huddled close, their feathers puffed up against the chill. Silas reached into his pocket and found a tiny folded boat he'd made the night before, one carrying a whisper of a worry he hadn't yet shared. He smiled to himself and placed it gently on the surface. The boat rocked slightly before the ducks nudged it forward, guiding it toward the misty waterfall. As the paper floated away, a small voice called from the path. "Mr. Silas?" He turned to see a young girl standing shyly among the reeds, clutching a bright red scarf. Her eyes were wide and curious but clouded with something heavier, an unspoken fear. "Hello?" Silas said softly, stepping closer. The girl hesitated but then held out the scarf. "My grandma gave me this. She says it keeps me safe. But sometimes, I feel very alone." Silas nodded. "It's hard feeling that way." She looked down, biting her lip. "I don't want to be lonely." Silas smiled kindly and motioned for her to sit beside him. He took a small piece of paper from his coat and began folding, the crease of each fold soft and deliberate. "Do you want to tell me what you're feeling?" he asked gently. She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared I'll never have a friend." Silas finished the boat and placed it carefully on the water. The ducks immediately pushed it, their beaks tapping gently, sending it floating toward the waterfall's mist. "Friends are like the rainbows," Silas said. "Sometimes they come after the rain. Sometimes you have to wait, but they always appear." The girl smiled for the first time, her fingers curling around the scarf as if it was a small hope. The mist rose, and a soft rainbow arched over the pond, shining just for her. Days blended like watercolor, soft and flowing, each moment touched by the quiet magic of the pond. Silas found comfort in the rhythm of his work, the steady creak of paper folding, the gentle nudges of ducks, the ripples spreading across the water's surface. One late afternoon, as the sky shifted to shades of purple and blue, a boy and his little sister approached the pond. The boy carried a small box, its surface scratched and worn. His sister clung to his hand, eyes wide and searching. Silas greeted them with a warm smile. "What brings you both here today?" The boy swallowed hard, then opened the box. Inside lay a handful of folded papers, each one carrying a small worry or a hope. "My sister and I wrote these," he explained quietly. "We don't want to be scared anymore." Silas nodded, touched by their bravery. "Let's send these worries on their journey." Together, they placed each paper boat on the water. The ducks gathered eagerly, pushing the boats toward the waterfall, their soft quacks like gentle encouragement. As the last boat disappeared into the mist, Silas watched a rainbow form, its colors bright and alive in the fading light. The little sister looked up at Silas with shining eyes. "Will the rainbows always come back?" Silas smiled. "Yes, as long as people keep sharing their worries and hopes, the rainbows will keep returning." The boy squeezed his sister's hand, and for a moment, the weight of fear lifted from their shoulders. The pond shimmered under the twilight, a quiet promise that no worry was ever truly alone. Night settled softly over the pond, wrapping the world in a velvet quiet. Silas sat on an old wooden bench beneath the willow tree, watching the silver moonlight dance across the water's surface. The ducks had gone to rest, their gentle quacks replaced by the soft chorus of crickets. From the shadows, a faint rustling broke the stillness. Silas turned and saw a woman stepping carefully into the clearing, her face pale and drawn. "I'm sorry to come so late," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "But I don't know where else to go." Silas stood, offering a gentle smile. "You're welcome here anytime. What's on your heart?" She hesitated, then unfolded a crumpled note, her fingers trembling. The words were simple, but heavy. "I'm afraid to love because I might lose." Silas's eyes softened. Love is the most powerful worry of all, but it's also the greatest gift. He took the note and carefully folded it into a paper boat, whispering a quiet prayer as he worked. Together, they set the boat on the still water. A lone duck, roused from sleep, paddled forward and nudged the boat toward the waterfall. As the mist rose, catching the moonlight in a delicate spray, a faint rainbow shimmered above the pond. The woman watched, tears glistening, and whispered, "Maybe love is worth the risk." Silas nodded. Sometimes, the bravest hearts carry the heaviest worries and the brightest rainbows. The night wrapped them in calm, and the pond held their shared hope, a soft promise in the dark. The days grew warmer, and the pond buzzed softly with life. Frogs croaked along the banks, and dragonflies darted above the shimmering water like tiny jewels. Silas moved with calm purpose, his hands folding worries into boats while the ducks quacked and paddled happily around him. One afternoon, a small group of children arrived, laughing and carrying bundles of folded papers. Their voices filled the air with lightness and excitement. "We wrote our worries here," the oldest boy explained, "and we want to send them away." Silas smiled warmly, inviting them to sit beside him. Together, they unfolded each paper, reading the quiet fears. "I'm afraid of failing. I'm scared of being alone. I don't want to be invisible." Silas folded the papers back into boats, his fingers gentle and sure. "Each worry is important," he told the children, "but the pond helps carry them away so you can feel lighter." One girl looked up with hopeful eyes. "Will the rainbows come even if we're scared?" Silas nodded. "Yes, the rainbows always come after the storm." The children carefully placed their boats on the water. The ducks eagerly pushed them forward, quacking softly in encouragement. As the boats reached the waterfall, the mist rose and the sunlight caught a bright rainbow stretching across the sky. The children cheered softly, their faces glowing with newfound hope. Silas watched them, his heart full. In these moments, the pond was more than water and paper. It was a place where worries turned into light. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain through the trees as dusk settled over the pond. Silas stood quietly, folding a delicate paper boat with the worry that had settled in his own heart, a feeling he rarely allowed himself to share. Just as he placed the boat on the water, a soft splash caught his attention. From the reeds emerged a young woman, her eyes bright but shadowed by something unspoken. "I heard about your pond," she said softly. "They say it can take away the heaviest burdens." Silas smiled gently. "It carries away worries, turning them into something beautiful." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded paper, trembling slightly. "I'm afraid of forgetting who I am," she whispered. Silas took the paper and carefully folded it into a boat, his fingers steady despite the weight of her fear. Together, they placed the boat on the water's surface. The ducks paddled forward eagerly, pushing the boat toward the waterfall. As the mist rose, a faint rainbow shimmered in the fading light. The woman breathed deeply, her shoulders relaxing. "Maybe I can remember who I am after all," she said. Silas nodded, feeling a quiet hope blossom inside him as the pond held another secret. Another worry transformed into light. The days grew longer, and the pond sparkled with the bright warmth of summer. Silas found comfort in the gentle rhythm of the seasons, the way the water changed with the light, the way the ducks moved with soft grace. One evening, as the sky melted from orange to deep purple, a young man came walking along the path, his steps slow and heavy. Silas watched as the man hesitated at the pond's edge, clutching a folded paper tightly. "Hello," Silas called softly. The man looked up, eyes tired but curious. "I've carried this for a long time," he said, voice rough. "I don't know if I can let it go." Silas nodded with understanding. Sometimes the hardest worries to release are the ones that have lived inside us the longest. He took the paper gently and unfolded it. The words inside were simple, but deep. I'm lost and don't know my way. Silas folded the paper into a small boat, feeling the weight of the man's uncertainty. Let's send this worry on a journey, Silas said. Together, they placed the boat on the water. The ducks quacked softly and nudged it forward, guiding it toward the waterfall's mist. As the mist rose, catching the last rays of sun, a rainbow appeared, soft and shimmering, a bridge of colors in the twilight. The young man watched quietly, a faint hope kindling inside him. Maybe I'm not as lost as I thought, he whispered. Silas smiled, the warmth of the moment filling the cool evening air. The morning dawned soft and clear, dew sparkling like tiny diamonds on the grass. Silas wandered to the pond's edge, the familiar calm of the water welcoming him like an old friend. Ducks bobbed gently, their quacks weaving a quiet song. Today, a little girl arrived, clutching a tattered teddy bear. Her eyes were wide but clouded with a sadness that tugged at Silas's heart. I'm scared, she said softly, her voice barely audible. I lost my mommy. Silas knelt beside her, his gaze steady and kind. That's a very big worry to carry. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Silas reached into his pocket and pulled out a fresh piece of paper. Would you like to tell me your worry? We can fold it into a boat and let the pond help carry it away. The girl nodded, wiping her eyes. Together, they wrote the words, I'm scared to be all alone. Silas folded the paper carefully, creasing each fold with gentle hands. They set the boat on the water. The ducks quacked softly, nudging the boat forward. It floated toward the waterfall, where mist rose and caught the morning light. A small rainbow arched above the pond, fragile and bright. The girl smiled for the first time, hugging her teddy close. Silas watched, a quiet hope blossoming in his chest. The pond had taken another heavy heart, turning fear into light. Afternoon sunlight filtered through the willow leaves, casting dancing shadows on the pond. Silas sat quietly, watching the paper boats drift along the water's surface, guided gently by the ducks. The peaceful rhythm soothed his spirit, a balm to the quiet worries he kept tucked inside. Suddenly, the rustle of footsteps broke the calm. Silas turned to see a woman, her face tired but warm, approaching slowly. She held a small bundle wrapped in a faded cloth. Good afternoon, Silas greeted her softly. The woman hesitated, then smiled faintly. I've come to leave behind something I've carried for years. She carefully unfolded the cloth, revealing a delicate paper boat, worn at the edges. Silas could see the words inside, faded but still clear. I am afraid I have no place to belong. Silas took the boat gently, his fingers tracing the soft folds. Belonging is a journey, he said quietly. Sometimes we have to let go of old fears to find where we truly fit. Together, they placed the boat on the water. The ducks gathered quickly, pushing the boat toward the waterfall. As it disappeared into the mist, a gentle rainbow arched across the sky. The woman sighed, a weight lifting from her shoulders. Thank you, she whispered. Maybe now I can begin to find my place. Silas nodded, watching the colors fade with the setting sun. The pond held their hope, a quiet promise carried on the breeze. Evening fell softly, the sky painted in shades of deep blue and gold. Silas walked slowly along the path beside the pond, the quiet sounds of night settling around him, the gentle quacking of ducks, the rustle of leaves, and the soft splash of water. A faint light flickered in the distance, and Silas noticed a small lantern swinging gently in the hands of a child. The boy's face was streaked with dirt and tears, but his eyes shone with hope. Are you lost? Silas asked kindly. The boy nodded. I was scared, so I ran away, but now I want to find my way home. Silas smiled gently. Sometimes, the hardest part is admitting we need help. The boy reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. I wrote my fear down. Silas unfolded it carefully. The words were simple but heavy. I'm afraid I won't be safe. Together, they folded the paper into a small boat and set it on the water. The ducks nudged it forward, quacking softly. As the boat floated toward the waterfall, the mist rose, catching the last light of day. A bright rainbow stretched across the sky, a silent guide. "Let the rainbow lead you home," Silas said softly. The boy looked up, hope filling his heart as the colors shimmered above. Silas watched him disappear into the woods, a small smile on his lips. The pond's quiet magic held fast, the keeper of worries, the bringer of rainbows. The pond lay quiet under the soft glow of morning light, the surface shimmering with tiny waves as a gentle breeze passed through. Silas stood at the water's edge, folding a fresh worry into a paper boat, a worry that belonged to no one but himself. Suddenly, a soft quacking drew his attention. A small duckling, separated from its family, paddled anxiously near the reeds. Silas smiled gently. "Lost, little one, aren't you?" He knelt and reached into the water, guiding the duckling back toward a group of ducks resting on a lily pad. The mother duck quacked sharply, leading her ducklings to the lost one, welcoming it home. Silas watched the reunion with a warm heart. Even the smallest can find their way back. He turned back to the pond, placing his folded boat on the water. The ducks nudged it forward, sending the worry downstream toward the waterfall's mist. As the boat disappeared, a brilliant rainbow formed, arching high above the pond. A symbol of journeys ended and new beginnings. Silas took a deep breath, feeling the quiet peace settle within him. The pond was not just a keeper of worries. It was a keeper of hope. Silas awoke to a soft drizzle, the raindrops tapping gently on the roof of his small cabin. The pond below mirrored the gray sky, its surface rippling with each drop. He wrapped a shawl around his shoulders and stepped outside, breathing in the fresh scent of rain-soaked earth. Near the water's edge, a woman stood, her face turned up toward the sky, eyes closed as if trying to catch the falling droplets. Silas approached quietly. "Rain has a way of washing things clean." She smiled sadly. "I wish it could wash away my fear of losing those I love." Silas nodded, understanding the weight behind her words. He took a piece of paper from his coat and handed it to her. "Write your fear," he said gently. "Then fold it into a boat. Let the rain help carry it away." She hesitated but took the paper, writing slowly. When finished, she folded the paper carefully and placed the tiny boat on the pond. The ducks, sheltering nearby, paddled over and nudged the boat toward the waterfall. As the mist rose, the rain slowed, and sunlight broke through the clouds, casting a delicate rainbow over the pond. The woman's eyes filled with tears, not just of sorrow, but of hope. Silas smiled softly. Love is a risk worth taking, and sometimes the rain brings the brightest rainbows. The following day dawned clear and bright, the air filled with the scent of blooming wildflowers. Silas moved quietly along the pond's edge, his fingers deftly folding another paper boat, this one carrying a worry whispered in the night. As he worked, a small boy appeared from the trees, clutching a broken toy car. His face was streaked with dirt, but his eyes sparkled with a mix of hope and sadness. "I'm sorry," the boy said softly. "My toy broke, and I don't know how to fix it." Silas knelt beside him, taking the toy gently. "Sometimes things break, but that doesn't mean they can't be mended." The boy looked up, puzzled but curious. Silas smiled. "Would you like to write your worry and send it on the pond?" The boy nodded eagerly. Together, they wrote on a small piece of paper, "I'm afraid things will never be the same." Silas folded the paper carefully into a boat and set it on the water. The ducks gathered quickly, nudging the boat toward the waterfall. As the boat disappeared into the mist, a bright rainbow stretched across the sky. The boy's face lit up with wonder. "Will my toy be okay?" Silas smiled warmly. Sometimes, worries fade, and things find new ways to shine. The boy hugged his broken toy close, hope filling his heart. The pond shimmered, carrying another promise of healing and light. The sky darkened with heavy clouds, and thunder rumbled softly in the distance. Silas stood near the pond, watching raindrops ripple the surface like tiny dancers. The air smelled of wet earth and moss, fresh and alive. A figure appeared on the path, hurrying towards Silas, an elderly woman wrapped in a thick shawl. Her steps faltered, but her eyes held determination. "I heard the pond helps carry worries," she said breathlessly. "I don't know if it can carry mine, but I have to try." Silas smiled gently. "All worries matter here. What do you carry?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded paper, edges worn and soft from years of holding. "I fear I've forgotten how to be happy," she whispered. Silas unfolded the paper carefully, reading the simple words. "Sometimes, happiness hides beneath our fears," he said softly. "Let's send this worry away, and maybe the rainbows will find you again." Together, they placed the paper boat on the pond. The ducks paddled over, pushing it gently toward the waterfall. As the mist rose, a soft rainbow shimmered, breaking through the gray sky. The woman's eyes sparkled with tears. "Maybe I can find joy again." Silas nodded, heart full of quiet hope. The pond held another story, a fragile promise shining in the rain. The gentle hum of summer filled the air as Silas sat beneath the willow tree, watching the pond's surface ripple with the soft breeze. Ducks floated lazily, their feathers glowing in the golden afternoon light. A young woman approached, her steps hesitant but steady. She held a small notebook, its pages filled with scribbled thoughts and fears. "I write down my worries," she explained softly, "but sometimes they feel too big to hold." Silas smiled warmly. "Would you like to send them on a journey?" She nodded, opening the notebook and pulling out a folded page. "I'm afraid I'll never be understood," she whispered. Silas took the paper and folded it into a boat with gentle care. "Let's let the pond carry that fear," he said, setting the boat on the water. The ducks eagerly nudged it forward, guiding it toward the waterfall's mist. As the boat disappeared, a brilliant rainbow stretched across the sky, painting the world in hope. The woman's eyes filled with tears, a smile breaking through. "Maybe one day someone will see me," she said. Silas nodded, feeling the quiet power of the pond's magic. The keeper of worries, the giver of rainbows. The evening air grew crisp as Silas walked slowly along the pond's edge, the soft crunch of leaves underfoot the only sound besides the distant quack of ducks settling down for the night. The sky above was painted with stars, shimmering faintly like scattered jewels. A small figure emerged from the shadows, a boy no older than 8, clutching a folded piece of paper tightly. "Mr. Silas," he whispered, voice trembling. "I'm scared of the dark." Silas knelt beside him, his eyes gentle. The dark can be scary, but it also hides many wonders. The boy looked up, uncertain but listening. "Would you like to write your fear and send it away?" Silas asked. The boy nodded and carefully unfolded the paper. Written in shaky letters were the words, "I'm afraid I'll be alone in the dark." Silas took the paper and folded it into a small boat, placing it softly on the pond. The ducks paddled over, nudging the boat toward the waterfall. As it floated away, the mist caught the moonlight, forming a faint, shimmering rainbow. The boy's eyes widened in awe. "See," Silas said softly, "even in the dark, there is light waiting to be found." The boy smiled, feeling the warmth of hope settle inside him. Silas watched the rainbow fade, the keeper of worries once again turning fear into light. A crisp breeze swept through the trees as autumn began to paint the leaves in fiery reds and golds. Silas sat quietly by the pond, the paper boats floating gently on the water like tiny vessels of hope. A woman appeared from the forest path, her eyes tired but full of quiet strength. She held a small bundle wrapped in a scarf. "I heard about your pond," she said softly. "I've carried this worry for too long." Silas smiled gently. "You're welcome here. Let's send it on its way." She unwrapped the bundle to reveal a folded note, edges worn from years of holding. "I fear I'm not strong enough," she whispered. Silas took the note, folding it again with care. Strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet and steady. Together, they placed the paper boat on the water. The ducks paddled forward, pushing it toward the waterfall. As the mist rose, sunlight caught a bright rainbow arching across the sky. The woman's eyes filled with tears, but her smile grew stronger. "Maybe I am stronger than I thought," she said softly. Silas nodded, the pond holding yet another story of courage and hope. The first frost kissed the morning leaves, turning the world crisp and silver. Silas stood wrapped in a thick woolen shawl, the cold air sharp but clear. The pond lay still, glassy and bright under the pale sunlight. A small boy approached, cheeks flushed from the cold, carrying a folded piece of paper. "I'm scared of the future," he said quietly, looking up at Silas. Silas smiled gently. "The future can feel uncertain, but every day is a new chance." The boy nodded but looked unsure. "Would you like to send your worry on the pond?" Silas offered. The boy hesitated, then handed over the paper. Silas unfolded it carefully, reading the simple words, "I don't know what tomorrow will bring." He folded it into a neat boat, smoothing the creases. Together, they placed it on the water. The ducks paddled forward, pushing the boat slowly toward the waterfall's mist. As the boat disappeared, a faint rainbow appeared, its colors soft but shining. The boy's eyes brightened. "Maybe tomorrow isn't so scary." Silas nodded, feeling warmth despite the cold air. The pond held the worries and the hopes, carrying them toward light. The winter sky was a soft gray, heavy with falling snowflakes that floated like feathers onto the frozen ground. Silas stood beside the pond, now edged with ice, his breath forming clouds in the chilly air. Despite the cold, a small figure appeared, bundled tightly in scarves and mittens, a girl no older than 7. Her eyes were wide and shimmering, carrying a sadness too deep for her young face. "Why do you come here?" Silas asked gently. She looked up, voice trembling. "I want to send away the cold inside me." Silas nodded, understanding the quiet sorrow behind her words. He handed her a piece of paper and a pencil. "Write down what you feel," he encouraged, "then fold it into a boat." The girl hesitated, then carefully wrote a single word, "lonely." With trembling fingers, she folded the paper into a small boat and placed it on the icy water. The ducks, brave against the cold, paddled over and nudged the boat toward the waterfall, where steam rose in soft clouds. As the mist caught the pale winter sun, a faint rainbow appeared, a fragile bridge of color against the white. The girl smiled, warmth kindling inside her chest. Silas watched, heart full. Even in the coldest times, the pond held hope. Spring arrived softly, breathing life back into the world. The pond shimmered with new energy, the water warm and clear beneath blooming branches. Silas walked slowly along the shore, his fingers brushing the fresh green leaves. A man appeared, carrying a heavy sack on his back, his eyes tired but kind. He stopped beside Silas, nodding in greeting. "I have carried my worries for years," he said quietly. "I don't know how to let go." Silas smiled gently. "Sometimes, the first step is simply sharing." The man reached into his sack and pulled out a bundle of folded papers, each one a silent burden. Together, they unfolded the papers, reading the worries. "I'm afraid of failing. I don't know who I am anymore. I worry I will never find peace." Silas folded each paper into a boat, his hands steady and kind. One by one, they placed the boats on the water, the ducks eagerly pushing them toward the waterfall. As the mist rose, the sunlight caught a brilliant rainbow arching across the sky. The man breathed deeply, a weight lifting from his shoulders. "Thank you," he whispered. "I think I can start again." Silas nodded, the pond holding yet another story of courage and renewal. Evening wrapped the world in a quiet hush, stars twinkling gently above the pond. Silas sat beneath the willow tree, the soft glow of fireflies dancing around him like tiny lanterns. He reached into his coat and pulled out the last folded paper he had made. A worry of his own whispered into the night wind. With careful fingers, he unfolded it. "Will I ever find peace?" Silas smiled softly, folding the paper into a boat one last time. He placed it on the pond's surface, watching as the ducks eagerly nudged it toward the waterfall. The mist rose slowly, catching the moonlight and sparkling with colors that shimmered into a beautiful rainbow stretching across the night sky. Silas leaned back against the tree, his heart lightened by the promise the rainbow carried. The pond was more than water and paper. It was a keeper of stories, a giver of hope, a bridge from fear to light. And Silas, the pond keeper, smiled, knowing every worry carried away made space for peace.